start of it in old New York.
My name is Dr. Rasta. I'm a chiropractor, and I practice a very unique healing modality called Network Spinal Analysis. Network Spinal Analysis is different because we're not only addressing the spine, but we're also addressing the way the muscles are holding themselves, the way the body is holding itself. So as a result of NSA, the person is able to get self-adjusted. So instead of me doing the adjustments, the person's body does the adjustment on its own. And it also allows for the person to release a lot of emotions that they're holding in their body and to feel very empowered because they are able to do a self-adjustment and because they're able to release a lot of emotions that they've been holding in their body for perhaps years.
And how would a chiropractor's touch be able to trigger somebody to release all that?
We start with various types of breath work. So the breath work gets the person really deep into their body and it starts to build self-awareness. The next part is we go into specific points along the spine that they're kind of like meridian points in acupuncture, but they're a bit different. And these are the points that you have the most amount of receptors by your spine. And by doing really light touches, you make the nervous system sensitive to touch. And as you combine this with breath work, the central nervous system starts to get into this pattern of generating movement. So there is something inside the nervous system or the spinal cord. It's called the central pattern generator. Central pattern generator gets activated when you're walking. Walking is not a conscious effort. It's actually a subconscious or an unconscious effort. So with NSA, through the breath work and through going into these touches along the spine, you're also activating a part of the nervous system that is associated with central pattern generator. So the central pattern generator creates those movement into the spine. And because the body has this innate intelligence, once that innate intelligence gets activated through breath work, through awareness, through these specific touches along the spine in a specific order, the body starts to move on its own.
So is this the key cornerstone of the type of treatment that you provide? Somebody comes in, you give them an overview of how to handle the breath work, and then you set off the triggers that will cause them to do like the self-adjusting NSA?
Yeah, when somebody comes in, I'm a very holistic person, so there's an assessment forms for the way different organs function, and there's an assessment form for different parts of the brain that are functioning. And then I also take few scans. So I scan their heart through a device called heart rate variability. I also look at something called electromyography, which I can see, like, based on the surface electromyography, I can see where they're holding the most amount of tension in their body. And then I also use something called the thermal scan, where I can see which nerves within their spinal cord is more activated, which means that the brain is sending more impulses there. And that signifies that one of the organs that the nerve that is going to is working a little bit harder. Then from that point on, I kind of have an understanding of where is their baseline. Of course, there's their history. There is me just touching them, and there's me just looking at them, seeing how they're holding their body. And then from there, we start the breath work and we start the NSA analysis. But there is also another part that goes with it. It's like looking at their blood work, looking at their genetic makeup. I do genetic analysis, I do blood work analysis. So it's not just one thing, but it's pretty much all the things that makes the human being the way they are, the things that we can measure. So it's not just, oh, I can help your spine. It's like, I can look at your blood chemistry, I can look at your genetic analysis, I can look at the way your muscles are holding themselves. So let's create a plan specific for you based on all those information that we have.
Okay, so somebody comes in and let's say they have like a low, I won't say vitamin D, but you do blood work, you get the results, they have deficiencies in something. How would you go about treating it? Would it just be diet and in concurrence with the NSA?
It really depends what the symptoms are. So let's say, one of the most common diseases of today is autoimmunity. People have different autoimmune functions. So autoimmunity means that the body starts to attack its own tissue. And one of the most common reasons for this is because our food is very toxic, our water is very toxic. A lot of the food additives that we have in our bread and simple things that we eat, the body doesn't even recognize it. For example, high fructose corn syrup, it's found in most things that we eat today, and it's very toxic for the body. So the body, first, it just has inflammation, but after a period of time, it starts to not even recognize, it becomes really sensitive. So it doesn't even recognize foods, it doesn't even recognize its own tissue. So it creates an autoimmune disease. Now there's autoimmune disease of different things. There's autoimmune disease of skin, it's called psoriasis. There's the autoimmune disease of the thyroid gland, it's called Hashimoto's. So there's a variety of different types of autoimmune disease. So one of the first lines in order to heal somebody is their stress level. So I get to look at those stress level and help them with their stress level through NSA. Another thing is the stress that's on their spine. So a lot of people have really tense spine. Their body is like in defense physiology, and their muscles are really tight. So then NSA will be addressing that part, helping them sleep better, helping them, have a better posture, helping them release those tension in the muscle. And then we also will look at, okay, let's look at your DNA and let's see what enzymes do you have that, and what enzymes you don't have. So let's say you don't have an enzyme to digest alcohol, then we know that you should absolutely not drink alcohol. Then there is we can do food sensitivity testing and see what types of food you're allergic to. So let's remove anything that is interfering with the body's complex system of working well. So by removing anything that's interfering with healing, that's one aspect of it. And by giving a personalized diet and nutrition and supplementation based on their blood work, based on their DNA, that's another aspect of it. And then we're addressing the stress part, making sure that the body is not stressed through a network spinal analysis. So it kind of all goes together,
How do you use all these different tests? Do you do all this right in your office?
Well, the blood work, you send them to a lab.
Right.
With the DNA analysis, you can get the data from 23andMe and Ancestry DNA or different DNA testing that a lot of people do. You have access to your raw DNA data, so they send me the DNA data, I get to analyze it, and then I do the DNA analysis. So yeah, I do everything in my office. I have a very big office with a lot of different technologies, and then depending on what each person needs, they will get a very specific protocol just designed for them.
So if myself or a Tony Talks listener gets their DNA done on 20 or something, and can we send it to have it? And
yeah, you can send it to me.
You're messed up over here. Take some vitamin D, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give you a lot of information. For example, one of the cool things that I will tell you if you should be having a vegetarian diet or if you should be having a meat-based diet. So that's been one of the really cool things that I've learned doing DNA analysis.
You can do that. You could tell that from 23andMe.
Yeah, I'm not 23andMe specifically, but 23andMe has your raw DNA data. Okay. So I can use your raw DNA data to extract information and to figure out if you have the enzymes to digest meat or if you don't have the enzymes to digest meat. So if you don't have the enzymes to digest meat, you're not supposed to eat meat, because when you eat meat, your body has to work so hard in order to break down meat. So then I can also look if you're somebody who has those enzymes, so then I'll tell you, good.
If I don't have the enzymes to digest meat, I'm going to be pretty depressed.
Yeah, but you also, after a while of not eating meat, especially if you're somebody who's sick, you will feel so much better that it will be worth it for you. For instance, I had a patient with an autoimmune disease of Hashimoto, which is the autoimmune disease of the thyroid gland. And I told her, you got to have a vegetarian diet based on your DNA. And, people with autoimmune disease have very high antibodies, meaning that their body is creating antibodies against their own thyroid tissue. So her antibody at the time was around thousands. And then she goes and she becomes a vegetarian for 2 months. And then she goes and checks her antibodies and they go down to 100. And then she's like, well, let's just go back to the meat diet. Let's see if it really works. She goes back into her meat diet for 2 weeks. She goes back and checks her antibodies again, and she's at 900 again. So literally that's a difference. That can make that big of a difference for someone who's sick.
So the higher antibody count, that would be a negative?
So the person, once she started becoming vegetarian, her antibodies went down and her symptoms went down. So her body started to heal itself as she was not eating meat anymore.
So many antibodies because she was constantly fighting things off.
Exactly. And also her body was chemically, I would say, it had lost its chemical tolerance to meat. So when she would eat meat, her body would think that the meat is something that it has to create antibodies for, because it wasn't able to digest meat, so it had to work so hard, so it had created a chaos in her body. But once she became a vegetarian, she was fine. So it was a really good example of seeing how it's important to eat based on the way your body can digest food.
Why is there such a variability with what people can eat and what people can't eat? What in our DNA and when our history of our evolution caused us to have different diets? Was it just because I came from certain um, tribal backgrounds or what have you that caused me just to?
I think that's part of it, but I think another part of it is that our DNA changes, like our genetic makeup changes as each generation goes on, you know? And I think part of it is that I feel like the next generations coming through, we are going to reject animal products, because animal products are being fed a lot of hormones.
Yeah.
Animals are being tortured. Um, they're getting a lot of antibiotics. So one reason could be that as our generations moves forward, you know, our kids, they may not be able to digest it. And on one theory is that it's just based on like what our ancestors ate. That was most helpful to them.
That would be something like the paleo diet.
Yeah.
Would you be able to pinpoint a diet that specific that where you see somebody and you could be like, the best thing, honestly, just looking at your stuff, there's obviously always going to be a little bit of gray area, but if you were to follow like a strict paleo diet or a strict keto diet or vegan diet, God forbid.
So I usually don't recommend like keto or a paleo or this or that. I will just tell you, like, based on the DNA analysis, it seems like broccoli is not something that you should be eating because you don't have the enzyme to digest broccoli. Or coffee is not something that you should be drinking because you don't have the enzyme to digest coffee. And a lot of times when I tell these people, they're like, oh my God, every time I drink coffee, I feel really good and then I get anxious. Or every time I have broccoli, I notice that my tummy starts to hurt. So usually there's also that correlation. So a lot of these things with genetic analysis, it's not, if I see a gene, doesn't mean that, because genes become expressed. So sometimes genes can be expressed or cannot be expressed. So if I see something on your genetic makeup is not 100%, it's not always 100%, because it depends, different things in the environment make your genes express differently. So I just want to make that clear that it's not 100% thing, but a lot of times it's correlation. People say, oh yeah, when I eat this, I don't feel as good, or when I eat this, I feel good. And also based on that genetic analysis, I will tell you what supplementation you need, what your body may be lacking. So maybe you're somebody who's not producing as much B6. So then your vitamin B6 becomes something you should take for the rest of your life. Or maybe you're somebody, your receptors for vitamin D are not amazing, or they're not working as well. So then I'll be recommending things that would be good for synthesizing those receptors. So usually vitamin D, in order for it to be uptaken, it needs vitamin A and K2. So then it becomes important to know what do we need to integrate so that the body becomes more sensitive in these nutrients that it's been deficient in.
And is this this a common practice? People come in, and could this be something aside from just general well-being? Somebody has like depression or anxiousness, like anxiety, just the changing in the diet and looking at their genetic makeup, you could. And how does this and how do you use the spinal network analysis? I hope I'm getting that right. And you know, along with this.
So the network spinal analysis addresses your spine, and your spine and your spinal cord are sending all of the messages into all of your organs. So if you have a better spine, if you have a more of a flexible spine, your organs are going to do better, just because the impulse that's going from the spinal cord, the nerves that are going into the organs, their impulse is going to be better. And also stress levels come down. So as a result, if you have less stress, you tend to do better in life. So that's the aspect of addressing the stress and addressing someone's spine. The other aspect is, I don't ever say that I treat anxiety or depression, because I don't, but I do believe that depression comes from inflammation. So, and it comes from inflammation within the gut. So I do help people getting their gut healthier, and as a result, when their gut becomes healthier, they feel better. And the reason for that is that your serotonin levels, which is a neurotransmitter that regulates your mood, if you have, if you have optimal levels of it, you'll feel happier, you'll take pleasure in your different hobbies. 80% of serotonin is made in the gut. So when you address the gut, you're addressing also the well-being of your mental health. It just goes hand in hand.
Yeah, that I didn't know it was 80%. That makes sense. So let's talk a little bit about the network spinal analysis. How did you
Okay.
how did you first learn it? Because I know there's traditional chiropractic practices, doing adjustments, getting people's spine at the right angles that they need to be at and everything. But where did this start, and how did you discover it now?
Well, I was working as a regular chiropractor when I graduated, adjusting people, and it just was not meeting. It was not juicy enough for me to say, I'm doing this and people are changing. To me, it was like people always had the same type of subluxations, the same kinks in their neck. So it just felt like I was doing this repetitive thing. And I just didn't feel like, oh my God, like something in their life is changing. They're telling me that they're making big decisions, they're making big changes. So one day I'm driving home from work, and I'm just like bawling in my car, and I'm asking God, why did you like send me in this path? It just doesn't feel like I'm serving my purpose. And I got home, and my roommate sees me crying, and she's like, what's going on? And I told my roommate, I just don't feel like this was my calling. I don't feel satisfied, and I feel like I wasted 4 years of my life and $250,000 of student loans. And she just looked at me, and she's like, I really feel like you should look into network spinal analysis. And I'm like, okay. I had seen network spinal analysis 2 years prior to it. I went to a seminar, and I saw people's spine moving, and I thought it's too woohoo, and I just didn't believe in it. So I remember sitting in the back of the classroom.
When you first see it, like woohoo.
When I first saw it, I thought it was so weird. I thought it was strange, and I went and I sat in the back of the class because I just wanted to get some credits for being there. And I'm studying my psychobiology, and I'm like, I'm not going to be associated with these people because I'm too medical for them. And interestingly enough, the teacher all of a sudden pointed me out and asked, and like there were, I don't know, 200 people in the class, he asked me to be a demo. So I just remember having to go in the front of the class. He did the NSA on me, and I just started to, my body, I just felt like it felt like I could feel all these different parts of me, and I just started to get really scared. And as a result of getting scared, I started to cry, and then my body was moving. So I just didn't know what to expect. So I remember that day, I just felt like I was probably very stressed, which is why my body was doing what it was doing. I never wanted to look back because it was a very strange experience. And I just felt like I wasn't sure what it was. So that day when my roommate said, look into network spinal, I was like, huh. But in my mind, I was like, I can't look at this because this is too woohoo, too hocus pocus for me. I'm a very medical person. So interestingly enough, I was reading a book by Dr. Candace Pert, and she's a neuroimmunologist. She's actually the person who discovered the opiate receptor. She's very famous. She also was in the documentary What the Bleep Do We Know? Oh, and I literally, like, I turned the page, and do you know her?
I've seen the documentary. Her name doesn't pop out, but I've seen that movie.
Okay, so I'm reading her book, and as soon as I get into my room, after my roommate tells me look into network spinal analysis, I literally turned a page, and I'm reading the story, and she's talking about the moment and the day she received network spinal analysis, and she started explaining in her book how she perceived it and what is happening with the nervous system as people are receiving this work. And then it just clicked. I said, this is it. This is my path. So that day I found somebody who does NSA close by, And I went for an interview and he hired me, Dr. Michael Whalen. He hired me. I started to learn the work and it just was so instant. I just got it. It just felt like I just always had it. And my practice started. So I worked with him for a year and then I started my own practice 2 years ago. And honestly, it's been so effortless. You know, a lot of times you start a business and you have to work so hard in order for it to keep going. But I've worked hard, but I didn't have to work that hard to get patients because it just seemed so natural. Like people just found me and now it's been only based on referrals. I haven't done any marketing for my work really as much. So I just truly believe that if you tap into your gifts, like everybody has a gift, if you tap into what is inside of you that God gave you, it's effortless. There isn't much work to be done. It's just so enjoyable because you get to share a gift that only you have it. It's only unique to you.
To become proficient in that looks good. So to become proficient in NSA, it sounds like it's like an apprenticeship, but you find somebody who's familiar with it. They could train you.
Yeah, well, no, not necessarily. It's a postgraduate study. So you actually become a part of the program and you go into seminars and you get trained by the person who's still alive, Dr. Donnie Epstein, and his teachers and his staff. So you get trained by them. And it's an ongoing teachings and training. So I'm not done with my trainings. I'm still being trained.
Oh, wow. How is it only based because you're in California? Is it throughout the country that chiropractors can learn this throughout the country?
It's throughout the country. It's actually, there isn't much happening in California as much. It's mainly in Colorado, but it happens throughout the world, in Italy, in Europe, in California, sometimes in Colorado, in different places.
This was discovered by one guy, Dr. Michael Whalen.
No. This was discovered by Dr. Donnie Epstein. Dr. Michael Whalen is the person that I learned this work from by working at his office.
Oh.
But Dr. Donnie Epstein was the one who created this work.
And how did he discover it?
I don't know. He's just a wizard.
He's a lizard.
He's a very, very intelligent.
Oh, a wizard.
He's a very intelligent man. He has many different. Truly, if you meet him, if you look him up on YouTube, he is just out of this world. And he studied a lot of different techniques, and he discovered this by accident, I believe, that he went into someone's spine and he did something and then he saw their spine to move and then he just kept doing it and he kept seeing people's spine to move. So then he started to develop this work.
What's the science behind it? And has there been any studies or research?
Yes, there's tons of science behind it. They just did a study at UC Irvine here in California that showed that your brain becomes more coherent as the network wave goes through your spine. They also did a cohort study where they followed people for 11 years, and they saw that people who received Network Spinal Analysis had more enjoyable time in their life. They had spontaneous changes. A lot of them stopped drinking or smoking. They started spontaneous practices such as doing yoga or doing different sports or going to a gym. So there's tons of studies that support his work.
So the 11-year study, was it two groups? One was going through and one was getting NSA treatments, the other was not?
No, the cohort study was just only done on people who are receiving network spinal analysis, I believe. There hasn't been a there hasn't been a study like that because there is no way you can do a double-blinded study. Because if someone is touching your spine, they're touching your spine, Right. You can't do this type of studies with a double-blind study. It's just not possible.
It was 11 years. 11 years of.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's.
For 11 years or 10 years, they followed these people, and they would get service, and they would ask them what has changed in your life, and a lot of them would report, well, spontaneous healing or spontaneous changes or spontaneous change in habits, more physical exercise, the fact that they were healthier. I can send the study to you, but I don't exactly remember all the little details, but it was a lot of great changes.
Yeah, that would be, yeah, I could put that on my on my
And
website.
I look at people's blood work, so I do blood work before and after when I start somebody on my care. And even if I don't do any supplementation, I don't do any dietary changes, their blood work always gets better, at least with the small sample of people that I have in my office, just with network spinal alone.
That's really something else that you could just trigger it because people have certain points in their blood work gets better. That yeah, that's I guess it could make
Yeah,
your body
I
run.
mean, there's different aspects of why somebody would get better. Yeah, I mean, if just lower someone's stress level, they're gonna feel better. Lower someone's stress level, they're gonna have more energy to want to cook, to want to eat healthier. And there's one aspect of that, and there's also another aspect of working with somebody on weekly basis who's gonna encourage you to be the best version of yourself. So, there is the fact that they're getting their spine healthier, but there's also like having somebody who's constantly cheering you on your path. Of course, you're gonna feel better. There's no other way.
Yeah, and and I wonder if you're helping their stomach where the serotonin is produced, which is reducing the stress because
Their
stress.
gut.
What was that?
Not their stomach, their guts, their intestines.
Stomach. Yeah, so you're making the body run more efficiently. So you're easing up whatever is on the gut so it could run more efficiently and produce more serotonin, which would lower their stress levels. People are feeling better. Stress is the silent killer, as they say. So maybe it's all related like that. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. You got it. You got it. That's how it works.
Look at that. And, anecdotal observations being confirmed by Tony here on Tony Talks. Good for me. Um, so, so what's a common what at your practice? What's a common thing people come in for that you treat with NSA? And are you still doing traditional chiropractic care? And does that all get wrapped into one, or could there be something where you do like everything's like a whole kit and caboodle where you're doing chiropractic care, traditional stuff, NSA, DNA analysis, and just saying, hey, this is what you need to do, and you're going to be the optimum you.
Yes, so there are people that come, there's so many different types of people that come to my office. If they don't know what I do, a lot of times they find me online and they're coming in because of their neck pain and back pain. But as a result of the work that we do, so many things improve that they never expected to get better. And then I have people that come in with issues and I have been their last resource. I have people with Parkinson. I have someone with Alzheimer who actually doesn't have Alzheimer anymore. So I have to be very careful with my wording. I don't treat any disease. I don't do it.
Okay.
I don't treat them. But what I do is I help the body heal itself. I help their body start the healing process. So I have people with Parkinson, Alzheimer, lupus, autoimmune disease, MS, multiple sclerosis, and just different types of diseases, also musculoskeletal stuff, neck pain, back pain. So it really just depends. If somebody just comes in for neck pain, then we're just doing network spinal analysis and sometimes adjustments. I do still do adjustments when I feel like it's needed. When I feel like I'm not able to address it through an NSA or it's going to take too long, I'll just adjust the person. But it just depends. If somebody is coming with multiple sclerosis, which is also an autoimmune disease of the nervous system, then I am doing more testing, looking at their blood work, looking at their autoimmunity, looking to see what is the issue. Why is their nervous system being broken down with MS? So doing food sensitivity testing, doing DNA analysis. So it really just depends how far they want to go. And it also depends how bad their issue is.
Okay, so if you if you have somebody that they have a certain sensitivity to a certain food, would you be able and they just like understand that not a certain food, but like a certain group of foods that they have in their diet, would like an adjustment or NSA be able to help them digest it better, or how would just because it helps it run more efficiently?
Eliminate it. So we at least do an elimination diet of the foods that they're sensitive to for 8 weeks. And we retest again, and sometimes their sensitivity is gone, sometimes it's not. So it just really depends. Like I've had people with gluten sensitivity that they came in the beginning, they had positive reactions with gluten, and then we went through our care, and then at the end when we did a food sensitivity testing again, they didn't have antibodies for gluten. So I have seen people being able to heal certain sensitivity. So when your gut, so there's a lining within your gut, and within the lining of your gut, you have these things called the tight junctions. So the tight junctions get broken down when you have inflammatory foods or you have foods that they're not good for your body. And the most common things that break it down is gluten and glyphosate, which is found in pesticide and herbicide. So it breaks down that tight junction. So then the bacteria that are inside the gut and they're supposed to stay inside the gut, they get out, or sometimes toxic stuff that's supposed to be inside the gut and gets eliminated through your bowel movements gets out. And then you have lots of inflammation within the body. The person feels fatigue. You feel like you can't concentrate. You get brain fog. So in that case, we come in and we say, okay, let's heal the gut. So when we heal the gut, then they are less sensitive to the stuff that they were once super sensitive to. They were getting brain fog by eating them. So once you heal it, then their tolerance goes a little bit higher. So there's something called food tolerance that changes as a result of how good your gut is, how good are the lining within the gut.
Did you see the documentary Heal?
I haven't, but I've heard of it.
Because there's a guy in there, the chiropractor, Dr. Joe Dispenza.
I love Dr. Joe Dispenza, yeah.
I have some of his books. I haven't read any of them yet. He talks that one of the most pivotal elements of the movie is that he gets seriously injured. They say he's probably never going to walk again. And you're familiar, but I'm just like, for people listening, they say he's probably never going to walk again, but he has like a certain mindset, or he just like visualizes. I forgot exactly how he did it.
Yeah, he starts to visualize every day. Like he literally visualizes his vertebrae healing. And that's what he does, like for hours. He meditates and just visualizes his vertebrae healing.
And then he got healed, and he's, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he's fine now. It's like fine.
Yeah, he's fine now. And he has tons of seminars. He becomes a neuroscience. He gets his PhD in neuroscience. And now he just released a new series called The Rewired, where he's showing through his scientific studies how literally through meditation, you can change your brain waves.
Oh, wow. How would that work? Is it just like a breathing where you're breathing in, breathing out? Because I spoke to a Buddhist a few episodes ago, and I spoke to him a little bit about some techniques, and he pretty much just said, just close eyes, and you just breathe in, breathe out, no counting, no nothing. Because I know some people like to count up to 10, start over, but I don't know how that would. I don't know how that would.
There's different types of meditation. But there's one that Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about that's very similar to NSA, where he says that try to breathe in from your coccyx, which is the last bone in your vertebrae, so your tailbone, and bring that breath all the way up, and just feel your skull expanding, because you have sutures within the spine where your skull is capable of expanding with your breath. And he says that through that you activate your pineal gland, which is located between your eyes. It's called the third eye. And a lot of people are having this transcendental experiences through that, because when you're breathing that way, you're actually making that cerebrospinal fluid that is within your spinal cord to move and create pressure within this part of your brain called the pineal gland. And I truly believe that's part of the reasons people have transcendental experience when they experience NSA, because that is a type of the breath work that we stimulate in the body, or we train people to breathe in that way. So, and then there's the heart, the breathing through the heart. And then people have shown through the HeartMath Institute that you can change so much of your physiology by just breathing into your heart and cultivating feelings of compassion, love, gratitude, things like that. So there is all these different types of meditation. It's not just, you don't just need to breathe in and out. You can actually focus in different parts of your body and get your breath in there and have these experiences that are transcendental, and where you reach this moment where you're not thinking about anything and it just feels like you're connected with something greater than yourself.
Yeah. Is there anything we haven't touched upon that you feel like is worth? I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that is worth sharing that you haven't touched upon yet. But is there anything specifically that you want to get out to the listeners?
Just want people to know that there's always a way. And if you're feeling down, if you're feeling depressed, if you're feeling anxious, I believe that the wisdom is found inside the body. There is a wisdom within the body that you can access. There's an empowerment energy that you can access. And sometimes we need help. And if I can help anybody, even within, if it's through a virtual session, if it's through an in-person session, I would love to help. And I just want people to know that they can be empowered by the power of their body. The body always wants to heal itself. It's a self-regulating, self-organizing mechanism. And we can always access that power inside of us.
So you could do virtual sessions.
Yes.
So if people want to this leads me to the next thing. People want to get in touch with you, if they want to follow you, if they would want to do a virtual session, how do we go about doing that?
They can give me a call. My number is 714-679-8608. Or they can email me at dr.tararasta@gmail.com. And then we can go from there. My Instagram is Dr. Rasta. They can reach me out on there. There's different ways to reach out. And they can also check out my website, drtararasta.com.
Awesome. That's great. That's great. I'm sure people will get a lot out of this. And hopefully we can tap into this episode, can help at least a few people tap into their inner wisdom and become better for it, thanks to your words tonight.